Ja, guten Morgen und willkommen oder guten Nachmittag und willkommen zum Webinar Intercultural Management. Der Großteil unserer Zuhörer ist englischsprachig, deshalb werde ich jetzt dann auf Englisch switchen. So welcome to our webinar Intercultural Management. Thank you very much for joining us today. We are very happy to have you here. So let me briefly run you through the agenda for today. So in the beginning, I will give a brief update, some introduction from India. Then we will have our expert speaker today, Dr. Karin Schreiner. She will talk on intercultural management in India. She has herself been to India as an expat, and she has a long-standing experience working with Indians in a professional way as so to say intercultural trainer, and with Indians and also with Austrians coming to India. And then in the end, as mentioned, we have a Q&A session where we will try to answer as many questions as possible. So let's now start with a brief update or with a brief introduction. Most of us will know us, but just to mention it again, the main office in India is the Advantage Austria office in New Delhi. We have two further offices that are the regional offices, one in Mumbai, which is for West Indian part, and then we have in South India, in Bangalore, we have a second regional office, and we also are responsible for the markets Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bhutan. Then we have a little over 700 Austrian companies who do regular business with India or in India, and we have 153 Austrian subsidiaries here in India, scattered all over the place, north, south, west, east, and also central India. From the Austrian perspective, India is the 26th largest export market, so it's quite an important market for our economy. And just two website links. So the one is to our WKWT website, where you will find the presentation afterwards, and where you will also find all the latest news, Corona related or also related to our events. And on the YouTube channel, you will find this webinar and many other webinars that we organized in the past. Now, let me give you a brief overview of the next events that we are planning. So the next one is on 10th of December, which is another webinar. It's on the Indian food processing industry. So it should be a kind of a short overview, and it will be a teaser event actually for the Austria Showcase Food Processing, which is planned for February, provided with all the travel restrictions that are currently in place, that it can be conducted in an analog way. In January, we are planning to have a learning journey, India and the Future of Money. Here also we have to see whether it's possible to have it face-to-face, so to say, or whether we shift towards a digital format. Then on 28th of January, we have the second Digital Austria Business Circle. And in April, we will have, so to say, our flagship event or one of the largest events that we are planning for next year. That is the Austria Showcase Automotive, in conjunction with a group stand at the Automechanica. And yeah, all these events, of course, provided that the situation with Corona measures and travel restrictions hold true. And I mean, for any updates, please always consult on the WKWT website or get in touch with us, and then we can give you the latest information on that. So with that, I would like to head to our next agenda point, and I would like to ask Dr. Karin Schreiner to give us an introduction to the intercultural management and what it means in the Indian context.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Mr. Pfeiffer, for this introduction and for handing over. I'd like to thank the Austrian Trade Commission for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today about intercultural management in India. management, we all know, is a very broad field. So I will focus on relevant topics that I regularly discuss in my intercultural trainings about India. And I will start with, as I said, relevant topics that I discuss regularly with in my intercultural trainings about India. So let's start, and I give you the overview about the content for today. After a short introduction, we focus right away into the core topic. And at the end, there is a Q&A, question and answer session led by Christoph Pfeiffer. And of course, I try to answer all the questions. So talking about India, we know it's a challenge because India is a subcontinent. India is a highly diverse country and a very complex culture. So this is obviously reflected in management, in intercultural management. So I will focus in the beginning on the diversity in India. These pictures give you a glance of the diversity in India. For those who know India, it's of course enriching, but it's also challenging, the diversity in India. We face diversity in various fields. We face it in the languages, in religion, in the social structure of society, of course, regional and cultural. We face diversity climate-wise in physical features. Some words about the linguistic diversity, because it's always outstanding when we look at the high number of languages that we have in India. We have more than 300 languages that are currently spoken, and 12 different language families. So languages that have nothing to do with each other, that are totally different, and about 24 different scripts. So this is the reason why the biculturalism in India is quite high. It's about 65%. And I think this is very astonishing, because we have to take this into account when we communicate and interact with Indians, that they are all, with those with whom we interact, they are bilingual. About religious diversity, just a few words, because it's interesting to look at the percentage. There are about 80% Hindus and a bit more than 13% Muslims, and Christs about 3%, and Sikhs from the northern Punjab 1.9%, and very low numbers of Pars, Buddhists, and Jains, about below 1%. So we have a high variety of religions, and this, of course, is also reflected in cultural diversity. So I wanted to mention this right in the beginning of my input to you, because talking about India is really a challenge, and there is such a wide range of variations across the country. So we can't really come up with very simple statements, and any attempt to capture this high diversity in India and of Indian culture is inadequate. So please take this into account. I'm not here to stereotype. I'm here to focus on specific topics that are relevant for people doing business in India and having business connections in India that are relevant for you. And I like to come up with solutions to answer your questions, but definitely not to stereotype and to transmit a kind of a fixed and stable picture of India. When we talk to Indians, very often, to my Indian colleagues, very often they talk about unity in diversity. So they know, they are totally aware of the complexity and the high diversity of their country, but still they consider themselves as belonging to a family, belonging to one culture. Of course, we know there is not one culture, but still there is kind of a unity in this highly diverse country. And this you can feel when you interact with your Indian colleagues, and it's not only feeling about the Indian culture, the uniqueness of this subcontinent in cultural terms, but also in terms of the social organization of the country, and also of specific obligations that are very common, also emotional attachments to specific rituals or religion or cultural practices and so on. So I like also this, and this is maybe that we think that we also see as Europeans coming from outside this and can feel this unity in India. Some words about the social structure of the country. Of course, hierarchical structures are prevalent. We can see them in families, strong vertical structures. We can see them in institutions and, of course, in companies. So this is more relevant for us. It's a sharply stratified society, and the solidarity, the more detailed, more inner connections takes place within social groups. So this we have really to understand that India is a country of highly different social groups along the religious lines and, of course, along the castes. Even though the caste system is, as you probably know, forbidden since the foundation of the Indian Republic in 1949, it is still at stake. It is still part of the social structure of the current society. So religion and caste are definitely dominant organizational principles in the Indian society. Today, of course, national identity has become much stronger, and this coexists with religion and caste affiliations. What is also interesting when we come from Europe and look with European eyes on India, to our Indian friends, is the social status. As I said, it's a strongly hierarchical society, and social status is very important. So the never outspoken question, don't you know who am I, is crucial, and we have to get the feeling of with whom are we talking, with whom are we interacting, from which background does this person come from. So either we can collect information from third persons, or we ask questions. But it is very important to know, because we adjust our behavior according to age, to social status, to function, of course, professional title, and expressions of admiration for people of higher rank in our interactions or in our way of communication is very common. And vice versa, expression of subordination is very common towards people with higher rank. So looking down instead of looking straight forward into one's eyes, or obtaining approval, or expressing extreme politeness is very common. So that's for Europeans, it might be a bit new or strange or unusual, because we don't have this in Europe. In Europe, equality is much more widespread in our society. And what is also interesting when we observe the behavior of Indians, authority is expressed through the entire habitus. So people have, in my eyes, very often a natural authority, but it is expressed not so much verbally, but really through the whole appearance and way of interacting and communicating. And this is very interesting, and we have to take this into account. Also, some words about social roles, because I know in India it is very important that we know that you know your social role, and everybody has his or her role through birth, of course, belonging to a specific family, and along with the roles assigned, of course, obligations are associated. So depending on your social status, on your position in the family or in the company, specific behavior is expected, specific way of talking, of interacting. And when I was very young when I came the first time to India. It was in the 1990s. I was totally overwhelmed with this fact that I was, of course, allocated the social role, but I couldn't fulfill it because it was so new, and I could not really cope with this social role I got as a European. So this might be a bit difficult for some Europeans. So that's why it's good to know that we have a specific status as Europeans when we come to India. It's a high status, but we definitely do not belong to castes. The caste system is really a system within the Indian society, and of course we are always outsiders. We are not in this group. Yes, Going on, also some words about the positive mindset that we face in India, that we see and feel and recognize in India. I think it's a basic positive attitude towards life, regardless of how poor or rich one is. It's probably linked to religion. It's also can be traced back to Indian mythology, Mahabharata and Ramayana. It is the fact that you learn in these myths that you can turn negative events into positive experiences. So children grow up with this attitude. Okay, well, whatever happens, it might be positive. We can learn something out of it. So this is very interesting, and I think we have definitely to take this into account. The omnipresent no problem, which you heard probably on a regular basis when you interact with Indians, means that there is not that there is no problem, but there will be a solution. It will be fine. It's to reassure you that we do everything that you will be fine. And of course, when we take it literally, and then we know there might be problems that we have to tackle, it makes us a bit angry, or we don't understand why Indians tend to say this positive phrase and do not mean it really. But to communication, I will talk a bit later. Going on to some words about corporate social responsibility, because it is very important in India. In India, companies have a high responsibility towards their people. So the people are always in the focus, and companies really tend to look after their people and feel responsible for their welfare or well-being. So it's also compulsory that big companies have to spend about 2% of their average net profits for 3 years on corporate social responsibility. So they do invest in education, in funds against poverty and hunger, in healthcare, in care for elderly people, in programs to improve gender equality. And I have a very good friend in New Delhi, and her mother, she funded a home for elderly people, because she said, well, today nobody's at home from the younger people, from the younger generation, because they all go to work. And the elderly people, they find themselves all alone at home, only together with the service personnel. And sometimes it happens they are in a bad condition. So that was the motivation, that she said, well, I like to care for the elderly people, and I set up a home for them to take really care. It's very rare to have a home for elder people, because normally the family is responsible for the elderly people in India. So this is a way companies, this was a private person, but very often companies take this responsibility and look in this way after their people. This is very common. I want to share another story with you. I have the same friend, her sister, she has in Kashmir a small pashmina shawl manufacturer, and about 25 employees. And she said, well, she tries to finance the education of at least 1 or 2 children of their employees. So from their 25 employees, she finances for at least 25 children the education. And I think this is a lot. So this is the attitude Indian companies show towards their employees. They feel definitely responsible, and we will talk about a bit later about this topic, but I think it's very important to know that it's on that level, on the responsibility of companies. And this brings us to our core topic, management in India. And the quotation that you see on the slide, the quality of a job is directly proportional to the quality of the personal relationship. So it shows that, of course, the focus is on the individual support of employees. So it is managing people and in the first range. That means relationship building on a personal level, individual interactions on a personal level, appropriate feedback, one-to-one basis, positive feedback, constructive feedback, and also regular interactions that show that you appreciate the work, that you are content, that you approve, that you maintain the relationship. Yeah, this is the most important thing. And good relationships with employees include also family members. That's probably not so common in Europe. We work hard against it, but in India it's still part of the management practice that you take care of the family. And also there is a mechanism, employee referral schemes, through which employees can recommend family members or very close friend for employment in the company. Recruiters say, well, I prefer somebody who is recommended than a person who I do not know at all. So references through family, references through good friends, through the networks is very important in India. And this is probably quite different to our attitude when we do recruitment in Europe. So family first, it is definitely common to ask about the family, how the children are, what they are doing, what training or profession they are doing, and so on. Also where the family comes originally from, and so on. So this is kind of bonding. On the small talk level, you ask a lot of questions, and probably have realized when you interact with your Indian colleagues that they ask you a lot of questions about your family, about your background, about your marital status, and so on. So questions that we would not necessarily ask as Europeans. So be ready to have answers, but also you can ask yourself, and it's a door opener in my opinion. There is also a special company leave for important family matters. So it's events. So it's common to take the family issues into account for a company. I think that's also different to European standards. And this brings me also to the topic of leadership. Of course, leadership is very important, but in India, leaders have a specific image in big houses, in big companies, big Indian companies, global or very international companies. Leaders have a very positive image. They are role models, and some characteristics are here listed. Charisma is important, being inspirational, meaning also transmit commitment, being very visionary and value-based. So have a strong sense of the important values that you have, and of course the company values. So corporate culture is very important. We will see it a bit later. Today, of course, it is a bit changing because modern leadership styles are implemented in big houses. Not, of course, there is also a high diversity in terms of management and leadership in India and how companies are structured. But what is interesting that we see also here a shift towards management of people. First of all, of course, focusing on strategy, and with strategy is always linked to vision and to organizational culture. So shaping organizational culture is very important in terms of creating a social mission. And this social mission is something that is kind of carrying the whole company culture. I think in Europe, we name it today purpose management. So that employees know exactly why they are doing it. They have the big picture. And this is exactly what is in India so important, that also employees have the big picture of what the company is doing. And of course, this needs a specific leadership style. So it's empowering of people. And that's why training and development is so important in India. They spend a lot of money. I will come back to that again later, to train people, to empower them, to of course empower them for decision making and so on. This is of course a new trend we do not see this in all Indian companies, but we can see it in bigger companies that are very international oriented. And of course, leadership is also taking into account investors' interests, but it's not at the first place. Yeah, it would be probably in US or in Europe at the first place. When we talk about leadership, we have to balance in India leadership styles. One is more paternalistic or authoritarian leadership styles with participative, transformational leadership style. And of course, we have to check with whom we have to do in our department or with our employees. The prevalence is definitely strong hierarchical structures in companies, and that means that you need a very clear distribution of tasks, that you transmit or that you allocate clear responsibilities, who is responsible for what. It should be very clear. And this is probably what we do not expect, because we know that India is a high context communication culture, so that also face saving, we will talk about that a bit later. But when I give instruction, I need to be very clear and very detailed. Also, deadlines should be very clearly communicated. And that means not only verbally and once, but written and often repeated. Also urgent and very important tasks that it has really done by next week, for instance. It has to repeat it regularly, and the importance has to be emphasized. That's the way people transmit important information in India. So we have to adapt to that, otherwise we won't get to that objective that we want to. Good support is important, so regular inquiry. So when I say, okay, I need this by end of next month, it's not enough that I say by next month, end of next month. In Europe, it would be fine. But in India, you have to check. You have to inquire on a regular basis. How is the work going on? How is the progress? Do you need something? Do you need my support? Can I help you? Will you be fine? Will it be fine? And can you hand in what I've asked you by end of next month? So you have to make it really sure, and this is with the help of relationship. So encouraging words, frequent emails, calls on a personal level. This is the key, definitely, to a good performance. Yeah, and to also to keep the deadlines and the due dates. So this is something which probably is not. We have a different way of managing people in Europe. So in Indian companies, it's definitely common to invest in people on a long-term basis. That means training and the development, as I said, is important, and also this that people are aware and committed to the social mission and purpose, to the big picture. Why are we doing this? What is my role in the whole picture, in the big picture? This is, I think, very important. So this managers and leaders have to communicate to their people. What we see today is that there is a kind of a agreement between company and employees. The company looks after the interests of employees and their families, and in return, the employees look after the company's interest. That means making profit and so on. So there is a mutual commitment, an agreement, and of course, when it works well, it's totally fine. But to find the balance between the two, it's very important. Yeah, so it should be clearly communicated. And empowerment of employees, of course, it's not brand new, but it is definitely a shift in leadership style, in how companies treat employees. It definitely challenges the traditional Indian kind of acceptance of hierarchy, deference to hierarchies, because, as I said in the beginning, the society is still very hierarchically oriented, and this challenges definitely these attitudes. But I think we have to face here also diversity in management styles and leadership styles. Accountability, we know that the willingness of taking responsibility is there, but not everywhere, not in every single employee. It is probably more there among higher educated employees and people. So I think it's a sensitive topic. I know there are many complaints. The Indians do only what they are told to, and so on. Of course, this group exists, but there are also employees and people who definitely are willing to take responsibility and just have to be kind of empowered to or encouraged, because they are not used to. When we look at family structures, we see how children are educated. The traditional style is definitely children are not asked questions. They are told what they have to do, so they obey, and they don't question anything what their parents say. This is the traditional leadership educational style. This is then continued at school and university, so students just get told what they have to learn. And of course, this is changing. Cultures are changing all the time. So we face, of course, both sides, also people who are definitely willing to take responsibility and have just to be kind of encouraged to do so. Yeah, but also here we have to make sure that when I give them a scope of responsibility, I have to make very clear the scope of the responsibility and what they in which range they are in which range their tasks. So going on, control of freedom. This is also an ongoing topic that we discuss very often when we talk about managing people in India. Of course, too much freedom, we know, is often interpreted as letting go, and managers appear all of a sudden as weak managers because they are not assertive enough to give very clear instructions. And as we said, many employees are not so used to express their own ideas. So encourage them and provide them a lot of training and development. This is definitely the key to change here also styles in management. Of course, we have a wide range of people. Highly educated people might not need so much guidance, so they need more encouragement or through transparency or responsibility. So that's also here, as we have in many intercultural situations, we have always to see in which situation are we, with whom are we interacting, who are our employees, which background do they have, where do they come from, what are their resources. We can only say this when we have a concrete person in front of us. Yeah. That's why HR management in India is crucial. It has a very important position also in the company, and very often you have contact persons, specific contact persons for private matters, and they are there to listen and to find solutions. So this is you can see how important it is when there is a specific person nominated for private matters. Also the labor law, I'm not a lawyer, so I have just I wanted to mention this because there is a high employee protection in India. Trade unions are very strong, and some sectors like service sector, IT sectors are kind of not so well organized in terms of unions. So there is kind of more freedom, but also here we find changes. We see changes in specific regions in India that they are organizing themselves for unions. Just to give you a short profile of employees in India, probably you know it, there's a wide range. Non-resident Indians, they are often very highly educated and live abroad. Then local workers trained in India but have with experience abroad. Many Indians do their studies abroad. Or local workers trained in India with no international experience. Of course, there are big differences. When you look for good education institution, of course, in India there's a wide range, and the most important and the highly recommended and with the highest international reputation are listed here, like the Indian Institute of Management. In diverse cities, the Indian School of Business and Indian Institute of Technology. So they are all highly recommended and really high level of education. In general, education is theory-based in India, and there is not that tradition with put things into practice like we have in Austria, Germany, universities of applied sciences, where it's much more praxis-oriented. So that means very often graduates starting in the company have no practical experience, except they do internships. This has developed a bit, but not to that extent that we face in Europe. Yeah, we know this is a problem. The high turnover in India of employees is a challenge, because I emphasized how important it is to set up trust, to develop trust, and to set up good relationships. So what are you going to do with employees who leave after a very short time the company because they get a better offer? This is a problem, but also for Indian companies. And Indian companies, nevertheless, invest highly in training and development right after new hires, despite of this competitive labor market, and of course also despite of high employee turnover. So they do invest still, because this is a question that I got very often in training. So how can I, what shall I do with the people? I do not invest in them when they leave after 2 months or 3 months the company. Yes, do, because this is the only way you can retain them. This is the only way you can set up a relationship. You can show what you offer as a company, and that they stay. Another way, there is no other way. Yeah, because Indian employees like really to develop, to get into well, of course, into different levels of or in the companies. So that's why further education, training, and development is definitely expected. Also foreign assignments. Yeah, very common, very highly expected, of course, when they start in international companies. Some words about managing Austrian Indian teams. Definitely there are challenges. There's a geographical distance, but of course there are different time zones. It's not that big, but still we have to face it. Some words about email correspondence. Of course, the language that we use in emails, written language, is there's a high risk of misunderstandings, and English language is used differently. You know, English, Indian English is very special, not only in the pronunciation but also in the expressions, different formulations, and so on. And like I came up with an example, I request you to send me the document, is very normal and common in India as an expression. As a demand to do me this favor. In Austria, it might come across as rude or impolite, because we use different language when we ask for something. And misunderstandings like this are, of course, very delicate and sensitive. We have to be aware that we use different communication styles, and also the Austrian politeness is sometimes misunderstood, and the expressions are taken as unimportant or not taken seriously if they are too polite. So this is one of the challenges in communication. I will come back to communication a bit later. Some recommendations for Austrian Indian teams. I will not go through because of time issue, but I think most of the aspects I was already mentioning it. It's definitely keeping up a personal relationship, also over the distance. Be clear in your emails, use a clear language, and answer immediately. We do that in Austria anyhow. So if you can't come up with a detailed response, just announce it and come and do it later, but just answer and try to keep up politeness and relationship and the relationship focus. Yeah. Some words about time management. We know it is also a challenge in India. Time is considered a bit different or understood a bit different in India. It is more relaxed, more fluid, but this does not mean that people are constantly late. I did not experience that. I think people are punctual. Sometimes traffic is such a mess that it takes you hours to go from A to B, but people tend to be punctual or try to be punctual. But of course, it's more relaxed. It's more relaxed than in Europe. But I would not say time is not taken precisely. Of course, a good relationship helps you a lot to keep deadlines. When you keep up good relationships to your team, to your employees that are working on a task, or when you have, of course, bigger projects, then break it down into smaller steps. It's definitely easier to control and to inquire along the way. High flexibility is, of course, also a resource, because it means that you can also rely on flexible time management, flexible reactions, also tolerance of stress. We know Indian life in India is stressful because there are so many people, there is so much traffic, and of course the challenges in businesses are high. Some people from Europe name also that Indians are managing the chaos. Of course, chaos is in European eyes, but they are able to manage high diverse situations or high challenging situations, I think, because daily life is as such. Yeah, so it's a question of what we are used to it. And of course, planning is important. In Europe, we plan a lot, but definitely it's depending on the situation, and Indians like to keep on being flexible. That's a very important point, actually. And this leads me now to communication. We are in a context of high context sensitivity communication, context sensitive communication. That means that it is important to be aware of with whom do I communicate, in which situation, about what, and when. When you know this, when you are aware of this situation, then you can adapt your style, how you communicate, and never forget to be on a personal level, come up with personal stories, talk about, I don't know, family issues or interests. This is highly appreciated. Pose questions, show emotions, be empathic, because I think this is the way we can set up relationships. And of course, in business, communication is direct. We're talking about hierarchies. So from top down, it's always a very clear and straightforward communication, which we do not have in this way in Europe. This is a broad field in communication. For this setting, of course, it's too short to elaborate it, but that's why it's important, specifically in businesses, that you be very specific and clear in your objectives. This is also important for negotiations. Yeah. And when something is very urgent or very important, then really describe the urgency and make it very clear that it has to be done at this time. But you have to make it really very clear. So that's probably a bit challenging for us, because in Europe we communicate in a different way. The meaning of yes is complex, because a yes has several meanings. When we say in Europe or in Austria, yes, I will do, yes, we mean I will do that. Otherwise, we would not say yes. But in India, but also in other countries in Asia, yes means very often, yes, I hear you, yes, I understand you, or yes, I agree with you, and does not implicate an action, a commitment. So it's just situational. Oh yes, I hear what you are saying. But that does not mean that it does not mean that I do what you want, or I am the same opinion with you, like you. So this is a challenge, and we have to keep it in mind. And the same is with verbal rejection. When Indians mean no, they hardly say a clear no, because it's considered as impolite. It's too direct. Here it is too direct, because it's personal, it's relationship oriented. So once we are in a relationship, we are very cautious in our verbal expression. So this list of phrases mean all more or less no, but it is expressed in a very polite way. And for the Austrians, I add the Austrian "Schau mal," which is definitely "let me think about it" or "let's see." So we reject it indirectly, but a clear no would mean that I close the door. And these expressions mean I leave the door open. So there's still room for further negotiation. But I express probably no. So this is also a challenging communication. So we have to face that. I will skip that because you have it on the slides. It is very important that expatriates that you send to India are very good communicators, because the challenge is, of course, the balancing between requirements of headquarter and the situation in India itself. Because the time is kind of over. So recommendations for a good communicator: definitely be aware of this high context communication, be aware of nuances in communication, listen carefully so that you really get the message across and get the message, read between the lines. So as Austria, coming from Eastern Austria, it might be easier for us. So that we communicate in a subtle way, and important messages might be kind of transmitted in a kind of indirect, subtle way, and in a face-saving way. So it's also a very face-saving communication in India. Establish feedback processes, and also take time for regular meetings, personal meetings, one-to-one meetings, either on distance or in person. And express appreciation. I think this is very much important. And now I come to the end with some recommendations for. I will not go through all the details. You have it in when you get the slides, but definitely seniority is something very important in India. Also the hierarchies. Be aware of on which hierarchies are you counterparts, are employees, a project manager. Like when you put the former employee now as a head of a project management, he is now the leader, or he or she is now the leader, and probably delegates more than is involved in the active work. So the status consciousness that I was talking in the beginning is very important, and also employees are aware of that. So have this in mind. Otherwise, networking, of course, it's a networking society, and clearly define rules and processes. We talked about that, and I think that's it. Show appreciation. So the relationship building in what we face in India, it's definitely in management. The focus on the people, establish good personal relationships, focus on training and development. So empower people, let them develop, include them also in your decision-making processes, specifically young, well-educated employees. Strive for it. And be very clear in your mission, meaning purpose management, so that the overall meaning of what a company is doing and want to achieve also for the society at large is clearly transmitted to the employees. That's very important, because that gives them kind of the sense of what they are doing. So with this in mind, I think management in India is manageable. And just a slide of perception of Europeans. This is the last slide, that Europeans are very respected in general, but also with this respect, there is an obligation of the role expectation. Yeah. So we have to also play our role as Europeans. We are highly respected, but we have to play our role, and that's sometimes not so obvious for many Europeans. Well, this is now the last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm impressed how many participants and listeners we have now, and I will hand over now to Christoph Pfeiffer, who will take your questions and who will monitor the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation, very elaborate presentation. I think we have already many points covered in there. And I also want to repeat once more the sentence you mentioned, or when it comes to management in India, which I found quite impressive and very sort of, yeah, it's kind of fitting. So the quality of a job is actually directly related to the quality of the personal relationship. So I think that says already quite a lot about yeah, how to work in India, or how to do management here in India. So thank you very much for pointing that out. And then also, yeah, big thanks to the audience. We have actually 170 participants here at this webinar, quite a huge number. And also thank you very much for the huge amount of questions that are incoming. We will try to get most of them discussed and answered here. And I also have to say a big thanks to some of you who sent already questions beforehand via email. So we also have that. And I will start with one question we have received via email beforehand. So I think it goes in the direction of this slide with the meaning of yes that you mentioned. What is the best way to get a real commitment from an Indian business partner? And then actually there is further elaboration. We have a few agents where agreements work very well, but with some, a contract is not really a contract, and the affirmation done means just it's okay until it's reconsidered, and that can be done several times actually. So this changing of opinion is quite difficult for our local suppliers to accept. Is there any trick to avoid it? Yeah. So for Austrians or European, a done or a yes means usually yes.
Yes,
yeah, so.
I know. Yes, thank you very much for the question. It's a very interesting question and a crucial question, of course. Well, I mean, Indians are basically trade people, so they love to negotiate. And it is very normal that they try to negotiate, even though they agreed to something. And so it's very common to be prepared. And as it is stated in these questions, with some it works kind of the European way, but with others probably not. So we have to adjust our kind of behavior, our way of interacting. And I think the way, why are they doing it? I mean, it's not that they like to annoy us or insult us, yeah, or embarrass us. It's because we know the situations in India change easily. So this flexibility with the resource is, of course, here coming also into play. That means, well, the situation might change, so we might adjust to that. So that's why we like to adjust our conditions. And of course, for Austrians, once we agree to something, and once we say, okay, we do it like this, it's fixed. So we don't like to change that. So we have to find kind of a compromise between these two different attitudes. On the one side, well, planning, it's fixed. We said we stick to that. And on the other side, staying very flexible, because we know we have no idea what is in 2 months. The situation could be very different. A solution to that, because of course we can't negotiate everything, be very clear about what you can negotiate and what you can't. I think to communicate this very, very clearly helps a lot, because in negotiating we know that good negotiators know very quick the weak points of their counterpart. So the more clear we are as business people, the easier it is for them to get the message. And I think this might be a solution. So be very clear in what you want, be also open or show what is negotiable. But if you do not want to negotiate anymore, make it very clear and do not allow it from the very beginning. It's like entering a bazaar and you look around and they capture you and you get out with the tapestry. you did not want to buy that. So be very clear right from the beginning of how far you can go. I hope this helps.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I think that was a very concise answer to the question. And let me now come to one question, and I think it's rather a remark, because you mentioned about reminders, and here it said that it's interesting that reminders shouldn't be sent twice a day, as Indians tend to remind multiple times a day. So could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that kind of misunderstanding or that kind of
yes, I think this is it happens very often. I discussed this very often in trainings. They don't like us to remind them too often, but they are sending non-stop reminders. One solution is, when they send too many reminders, it's just to answer immediately and say, well, I will come back in 2 hours with a more detailed response, but right now I'm busy. So avoid these multiple reminders from the Indian side in answering immediately, but postpone your detailed response. And I think to avoid such email back and forwards, I think it's better to be very explicit. And of course, if you don't get an answer, I would pick up the phone. I would just call. Because very often in Austria, we tend to write emails. This is our way of the preferred communication. Of course, it's individual, and there are many people who are all anytime ready to pick up the phone. But we tend to write more emails. And if you don't get an answer, just call them, and then you have them on the phone and discuss what you need, and make very clear why it is so urgent. I think it is definitely linked also what I said. Try to transmit urgency and importance very clearly, but probably not with red color and with underlining, but more verbally, and come up with good reasons. Explain the whole situation. I think to bring the big picture and the good explanations that are profound and reasonable. That would also change their attitude, yeah, and also explain why it is so important for you, because you are dependent on what they send, and then of course you are responding to your superior and so on. So that's of course a whole structure. So I think I would be very clear in why it is so important, and for me personally, but also for the whole. Give the whole picture.
Okay, thank you. And one question, is payment or income, is that something that is openly discussed among Indian colleagues, or is it kind of a reserved
I think it is more open. Right. I think it is more open discussed than in Austria. In Austria, it's kind of a taboo topic, but India is. I think people are striving to have a good life, to earn a lot of money. You see it with young people; they change very often job because they get better offers and so on. So it is an issue that you talk about, and people are measured, kind of categorized of how much they earn, and so on. So it is definitely more openly discussed than in Austria or Germany. I don't know, in Europe in general.
Okay, and another money-related question: when it comes to business dinners, who should pay actually? I mean, is it that the Europeans with the high standing they automatically should pay, or does it depend on the context?
I mean, a business dinner normally somebody invites somebody initiates the dinner. And this person should invite. It's polite to invite, and then in return, you are invited, of course, by Indians. But if you'd like to have a business dinner, so sharing the bill is a no-go. Definitely, once you initiate it, you say, okay, it would be nice to have dinner together. also dinner, of course, are a door opener because you talk about so many different things. Then you should also invite your counterparts, and you can be sure that you are in return invited also. But make
Okay,
it
yeah,
clear that this is an invitation. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Always, again, the clarity of communication, as we already heard several times. Yeah, now when it comes to negotiations, I mean, I'm not sure if we can answer it in general, but here the question is, how many negotiation rounds should be considered or planned? I mean, is there some sort of general answer to that, or does it also depend on the specific sort of deal or business relationship?
Yeah, of course, it depends on how big the deal is. If it's a minor deal or a very complex setting negotiation, so we can't really say it. But definitely there are several rounds because of the hierarchies. So the first round starts, then it has to be reported back to the superiors, which is of course different. We can delegate power, so our negotiation team can make decisions. Very often, of course, we report back to the headquarters, but normally it is discussed before, and they have more freedom. In India, you don't have so much freedom, so you have to report back to your superiors, and it has to be discussed, and then you get back into the negotiations. And of course, the more important it is, then the higher level of management or leaders are involved. So it takes time. That's why there is no rule, of course, how many rounds, but be prepared that there are several rounds, and that also then the decision-making process, it takes long. It takes quite long. I mean, in Austria, we also take quite a time for in decision making, but I would say be prepared for a longer round, and but there is no rule how many rounds.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. And now, I mean, we already heard that actually this personal relationship is very important. And here the question, I think, also goes towards kind of making the deal. I mean, how important is the social life or this kind of social, being social besides business meetings and besides actually this negotiation and making the deal?
Well, I think it's very important. As I mentioned, personal relationships are important, and in India you do long-term businesses. Yeah, so it's not just for one time. It's rare, but basically it's long-term. So of course, then socializing is very important. Networking is very important. Indians are friendly people. They invite you easily to dinner or lunch or on the weekend on their farm. So take the opportunity, and it's very important because it's important to have informal communication settings with your business partners, because then you develop your relationship, that you build up trust, and that you get to know the family, and so this is how in India also business relations work. It's very strongly on a social basis, and of course it's interesting to get to know the networks, and of course you are introduced to a network, and you can take advantage of this network, so you get new contacts and so on. So I think it's very, very important.
Okay, and when it comes to decision making, I mean, yeah, I think it goes again in towards this clarity in communication. How do you deal with the mentioned tentative nature in India when a firm decision is needed as a basis for further work?
And you don't get the firm decision.
Yeah, then it's sort of always kind of more tentative and not this clear commitment or this.
I mean, if it is necessary for the business, either production or anything else, and you don't get a clear answer. Well, I mean, it depends. when it's really necessary and important for you to have a clear answer, I would explain it why you need a clear answer, because a whole production line is depending on it, or whatsoever. Yeah, I would make it clear. I know that Indians tend to hold a bit and stay kind of they were reluctant to decide. That's true, or it happens. But I would definitely make your point very clear, why you need this clear decision. Otherwise, it can't go on, the whole process.
Okay,
so again,
thank you.
In such situations, a very clear communication would be important.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And yeah, the next question is on kind of a sort of a literature list. If we can make available a literature list, especially when it comes to communication and understanding, yeah, Indian English, so to say. So I think we can share a list afterwards with the participants.
With pleasure. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, this is now a little longer question. I have to read now from the computer. Yeah, so an Austrian IT company is in negotiation with a huge Indian company. The Indian partner broke the deadline and doesn't give a concrete feedback on our, or so on the clear emails from the Austrian side. What would you recommend? Stop here or repeat the current process?
It's always, of course, we would need more information to give really a good answer. But I would, if it is important for you, I would insist, and then I would set up a personal contact, either a meeting. I mean, of course, now we can't, but have a video call, one-to-one meeting with your counterpart or with the responsible person. Try to get somebody who is in a high position, actually, in this setting, on the phone or on a call, to see what is going on. I would insist. I mean, if it is important, first decide if it is important for you. Obviously, yes, and then I would insist. I would not give up easily, actually. This is also coping with kind of indecisiveness in India, which is don't give up too early. Would be a pity, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And also in that case, I mean, you see now my contact details below, but we will also share, of course, the contact details of Dr. Schreiner, and I think it's also a good way to get in direct touch and to discuss the, so to say, the detailed case, because we can go through the details here now. Yeah. And then next question on diversity. So in Europe, diversity and equality topics are very important. So for example, when it comes to gender, sexual orientation, religion. So this is very much visible and in focus these days. What is the perception and mindset in India about this? And I suppose here also this caste consciousness plays a much larger role in India.
Of course. I mean, their diversity, I mean, I explained it in the beginning, is a fact. In terms of diversity management, in our understanding, dealing with these diversity dimensions, of course, it is. There are many attempts to do so, specifically gender, and you see many. It is improving. There are programs to improve gender equality. Big companies are focusing on that, like we do in Austria as well. You find more and more women in crucial, as in important positions, also in leadership positions. So this is not the issue, but of course, to bring it on a broad level, this is definitely a challenge. And we know there are so big differences in terms of how gender is perceived. I think basically the attitude is the same. Respect of different backgrounds, respect of different religion, but of course, and it depends then of the corporate culture of the company, how much they do, how much they really implement diversity management in their company. I'm sure there are many companies who are doing that because it's part of their corporate identity, and others they don't do it at all, like we have in Europe. It's a young kind of management requirement. I don't know. I mean, there are laws, of course, but we have specific diversity or anti-discrimination laws in Europe. Probably you have this not so in the same sense in India, but I think it's a important topic, and of course it's we have the social differences actually that are definitely a topic, but again depending on the company, because we have many educational programs. Also, people from lower castes can climb up the kind of the social hierarchy. They get a good education. They get a job in a good company. They have a good position. So, but they are low caste. So it happens very easily. And of course, it might happen that there are tensions between employees, between groups of employees. Of course, this we probably hardly can understand or perceive because we are outsiders. But the better educated people are. But I mean, it's so diverse. It's so complex. This topic. It's difficult to say, but I think there is a lot going on in India as well in this respect, diversity management. To make it short.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, on the presentation, as mentioned in the very beginning, presentation will be made available on our Vacoati site, and also the video recording we will put on our YouTube channel. Just give us a few days until we sort out all the technicalities for that. Yeah, then one maybe interesting question, do Indian partners differentiate or clearly differentiate between Austrians and Germans? Is there, from the Indian mindset, a difference, or is it kind of very similar or the same even?
Of course, it depends how familiar they are with the two countries. Some have studied in Germany or have relations in Germany, or their family members in Germany or Austria. I think it depends about the knowledge. If they have no clue, probably we are all German speakers, so they just put us into one kind of. They focus more on the similarities. It depends on the knowledge. Normally, I think the perception of Austria is very positive in general, linked to, of course, many kind of music and also the classical stereotypes or cliches. I think what Austrian and German companies have in common is the high quality of products, the reliability, and in this, I think they take us as equal or as very similar, yeah, in terms of time management, in terms of commitment, of predictability, of reliability. I think from that perspective, they probably put us close together, which is not a disadvantage. But of course, we can, when we are really set up business relationships, we can explain the difference between Germany and Austria, and we know there are many differences.
Yeah, and then how would you assess to make business in India as a Muslim? Are different religions welcome here?
Oh no.
Again, diversity and. Should I repeat the?
Yeah, please, because I couldn't catch.
So how would you assess the opportunity or the chances to make business in India as a Muslim? Are different religions welcome?
I mean, different religions, of course, is a fact in India itself. So we have a variety of religions, as I said in the very beginning. So people are used to these religious differences. And normally it's not put in the forefront. In businesses, it's just a fact, and people are taken as Hindus, as Muslims. I think in business it's definitely not in the forefront, and I would say it's not an issue, because I mean, it depends on the religion that the company has, or the person which is in negotiation. But I think it should be not a negative aspect in business relationships.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is rather a non-topic when it comes to business relations. And I mean, Indian companies also have strong business relationships with Middle Eastern, the Middle Eastern countries. So it's
exactly, yes.
sort of when we talk about business, it's it's actually business. Yeah. And the next question: How should you address an Indian business partner, with the first name or last name, or?
Yes, it's a very good question. Well, Indians are more formal than other Anglophones. So it's not that you address them immediately with the first name. It's definitely last name. It's like in Austria. Of course, then when you get kind of more familiar with each other, then you use the first name, like we do it in Austria as well. But first encounter is always very formal and very polite.
Okay, thank you very much. I see that actually we are already running out of time. And unfortunately, we still have many more questions. So we will not drop these questions. We will, of course, take up these questions. We have them saved here, and we will then answer them to you directly via email. Yeah, since since time is since I see the countdown already on the edge, I would like to thank you, especially Dr. Schreiner, very much for the presentation, and also for the Q&A session, for all these answers that you gave to us. I think it was very helpful and useful for us. And yeah, to the audience also, thank you very much for participating, and we will follow up on the questions, and I hope that you will also watch the YouTube channel, and that we see you at the next webinar again. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.